Don't stop.
Hey, I'm your host, Zach Randles-Friedman. Thanks so much for joining me. Today, I have my first guest from down under. How did you like that Australian accent? Not very good. My first guest from Australia is on, and I've never had anybody on from Australia or New Zealand. Have I? No, I have not. And so it's somewhere I really want to go. I want to go to New Zealand more than Australia, but I want to go to both. My friend Elise, if you're listening, she lives in Australia with her husband Peter and their 2 kids, and that's a reason for us to go. The problem is that I have been to Asia before many times. I've gone to Singapore, I've gone to China, India, Russia. I've taken long flights. I can handle it. I just make myself sleep, watch a movie, eat, sleep some more. You have to do it business class or more, though. You cannot do it in even premium economy, that long of a flight. But my husband, he can't make it. I'm not even sure if he can make it in first class. We just got back from a vacation together and had to share a same bed because we sleep in separate bedrooms right now because I have a horrible, horrible sleep. If you listen to any of my past shows about sleep, I sleep horribly. And he sleeps like he could sleep in the middle of a football field when the game is taking place. Like he can sleep anywhere. But he had allergies this weekend when we were away, and he was sniffing and coughing and moving around, and just the bed that we had, if he just barely moved, I could feel everything. And then I was like super sensitive to it. So it was a horrible. But going back to my story of why you're listening to this podcast is that it is about a guy who lives in Australia, and he's written about what it's like to be out in the bush and Outback, and he is a teacher, and he's got a really interesting story. When his publicist or manager reached out to me, I did a little bit of research on him. He seemed like an interesting guy. He talked a little bit about his family. He talked about mental health. He considered suicide at one point. I really appreciated everything that he, talked about. He was a really good guest. Support him. Buy his book. I bought it. It's on Amazon, and he's an interesting guy, like I said. And let me know what you think if you buy the book. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the episode. Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything at a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I'm joined by Paul Rushworth-Brown. He's an award-nominated author known for his gritty and authentic historical fiction. He's written several books. Paul brings struggles of ordinary people and history to life with powerful storytelling. He's been featured on ABC, BBC, and beyond. And today, we'll dive into his journey, his inspirations, and the stories behind his book. His latest book, Outback Odyssey, is hailed as Australia's To Kill a Mockingbird, a land in Australian historical fiction. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
You're my first Australian guest, so welcome. I'm so happy to have you on.
Welcome to sunny Sydney.
Yeah, so you guys are... So we are in summer and you're in winter right now. So how's the weather there?
I said sunny, but it's actually pouring with rain.
Oh, it is? Okay. We're ready for winter here. It's been a hot summer here in Boston, so we're ready for winter.
So I'm in your future.
Yeah, exactly. You are. I was going to say something about your press release went out, but it was like 2 days ago in my time at this point. So you lived in England and Canada. Now you're in Australia, right?
Yeah. I was born in England, went to high school in Canada, but I'm Australian, and I've been living here since the early 80s.
Cool. And how is kind of living in those different places, has that kind of helped you with your storytelling?
Yeah, I think so. I think every experience that somebody has it does influence what you're writing. With this novel, Outback Odyssey, I spent quite a lot of time working in the Outback, traveled all through Australia, hitchhiked and all that type of business.
Oh, you did?
Rough. Yeah. Living rough at the side of the road.
Were you off the grid part of the time and stuff? Just kind of
Yeah.
living that way?
Yeah, out in the bush. Yeah, yeah. Like I was a navvy, so a navvy is somebody that sort of like is in a mobile camp that basically
Okay.
just moves up a set of train tracks, and basically what we used to do is replace the sleepers underneath the track.
Okay.
So I used to do that 8 hours a day, 42-degree heat,
Wow.
um, millions of flies.
Yeah. So this is a better career path for you, what you're doing now, writing and
Yeah,
this.
well, yeah, I'm actually a teacher as well, so
Okay. And you have a podcast that you kind of mentioned before we first joined. So tell me
yeah.
about your podcast.
So it's Down Under Interviews,
Okay.
and I actually run it. I mean, my daughter Haley, she produces it,
Okay.
and basically what we do is we invite authors from all over the world to come on the show, and I basically just ask them about their novels and their work, and then I develop. Well, Haley does develops promo ads for them for their book trailers and all that type of thing,
Awesome.
and then we share it all social media, develop events for them, and yeah, it keeps me busy.
Yeah. There's a woman named Miriam Margolis, and she did a cross country. I don't know if you've seen her documentary. It was like on HBO Max here in the United States, I believe. And she did this kind of cross country and meeting all these people, different people from Australia. And I was such a fascinating series that she did. So, and
Yeah,
I've always wanted to go to Australia, and I have a good friend that has moved to Australia and outside of Sydney, I believe.
yeah,
And I don't think she's coming back to the United States. She loves it there so much.
yeah. Sort of like I've been all around the world, and I wouldn't live anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I live in Sydney, but as I said before, I've spent a lot of time sort of like traveling around Australia. Hitchhiking. Obviously, I wouldn't do it these days, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite an amazing place. And this is my fourth novel, Outback Odyssey, and it's the first time I've delved with Australiana.
So how do you kind of start whenever you're thinking about an idea for a book, and you're like, okay, this is my concept. Like, how are you like? What's your concept for actually putting that together? Like, what you want to write? Like when you pick up the pen and paper and you start writing or typing, I guess nowadays, like, and you write historical fiction. So tell me like how that all comes together.
You know, a lot of people have asked me that, and I don't plan anything.
You don't? Okay.
And to me, when I start writing, it's just like a movie appearing in front of my eyes, and all I do is transfer that movie onto the computer or type it into the computer.
Yeah.
And then because I don't plan anything, there's lots of twists and turns and things that I can change here and there to make it even more of a twist or a turn or it's I'm weird.
No, but that's how you hear a lot of people that write music and songs and stuff. It sounds very similar to how they have this song in their head and they just, they don't plan it out. They just kind of write it out as it comes.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you kind of got that gift of writing, like
Yeah.
same as a songwriter or a musician.
Yeah, it's an interesting and I suppose fortunate way to be able to write because I never have writer's block.
Really?
I used to get it. Yeah, never. When this is my fourth novel. When I first wrote my first novel, I did a little bit, but never anymore. It just flows.
Yeah. And are you already thinking about what's coming next?
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So your novels, I did some research on you online, and your novels are kind of described as kind of authentic and gritty, and you're balancing this the historic, like Australia in this book, for example. And how are you kind of like making sure it's authentic and accurate, but also kind of putting that fiction into it? I think it's fascinating how you do that.
Yeah. Firstly, I researched the hell out of everything. This fourth novel, Outback Odyssey, is probably a little different to my other three novels because it's got two layers to it. So, like on the top of it, it's a historical fiction, romance, adventure type novel, and people can read it as that. But it's also allegorical. So, in other words, there's a lot of symbolism underneath, which ties in and and this fourth novel, I really wanted to write a novel that meant something, that could get people to sort of like look in the mirror at themselves
Mm-hmm.
with regard to colonization, with regard to First Nations people.
Yeah.
And also as part of that, it gives a very, very, because I'm quite a descriptive writer, it gives a very, very good feeling of what it is to sort of like be in the bush, be in the outback, dealing with sort of like the characters, First Nations characters. And whereas sort of like in most novels about Australia, First Nations people are actually, they're in the margins. But in this novel, First Nations people are actually sort of protagonists. They sort of like present their rich tapestry of culture and that type of thing. But getting back to your original question, I have to be very, very careful because I can't talk for Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
What I do is I resonate some of their feelings and some of their thoughts and give the reader a really good, I suppose, insight into their rich tapestry and culture and their wisdom.
And do you ever get feedback from like the people that, after you wrote this book, did you get feedback from any of the people that were, I know it's fictional, but some of it's based on reality. Did you ever get feedback from any of them? The people that you wrote
Well, it only
about?
came out in June.
Okay.
And yes, I have, do you mean to Aboriginal people?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually, the proceeds, $1 from every paperback and 50 cents from every download actually goes to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation.
Oh, that is so amazing.
Yeah. So, and also I spoke to Auntie Claire. So over in Australia, out of respect, we call elders auntie and uncle.
Okay.
Right. So I spoke to Auntie Claire, who's an elder in the Gorigal mob in Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite an adventure to write it.
And whenever you're doing your research, you're obviously you went across the Outback, you met all these different people, but are you going into like, I don't know, the archives sometimes to kind of like really look at the history? Tell me about that, because I think so my father did that with our family history, where he went to, libraries and town halls and stuff all across the country at one point, trying to look for information about just our family history and stuff. So, and I thought it was fascinating, but tell me about yours.
Well, I had to be very, very respectful.
Yeah.
And so I had to be very, very careful about how I wrote things and how I presented things. So I went into a lot of anthropological texts in the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't make up anything, even though it's obviously the story's fiction.
Yeah.
Anything to do with sort of like Aboriginal culture or any of that type of thing is actually from anthropological texts written back in quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And then obviously all the rest is from my imagination, the story obviously, and the arc of the story and the characters and all that type of thing is me. But I wanted to be very, very truthful and very, 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 very respectful of First Nations culture and try and get as close as I possibly could to it without actually, in other words, I didn't make anything up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's amazing because, how many people are doing that now? You don't want to lose that. And one day we'll lose all that history and all that knowledge if somebody doesn't do the things that you're doing. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, First Nations people in Australia, they've been living here for 60,000 years.
Yeah.
One of the oldest cultures in the world.
Yeah. And,
we don't know sort of like one tiny bit of sort of like the things that they know.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example from the novel, right? The main protagonists are First Nations stockman by the name of Durari and an English migrant that came over as a 10-pound pom. Anyway, to make a long story short, they sort of like send him out to the outback to work. Now, obviously, the 10-pound pom was an Australian scheme back in the 50s where they wanted to keep Australia British. So they invited all the Brits, Scottish, Irish, over to Australia, and they only had to pay £10, and the Australian government would pay for their trip. They'd also find them somewhere to live and get them a job, right? And the only stipulation was that they had to stay 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't stay 2 years, then they had to pay back the Australian government about £100, which was a lot of money back in those days.
Yeah.
So Durari and Jimmy, who's the migrant English immigrant, he takes him out into the bush because Jimmy he doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Right. So in England, in Yorkshire, that part of it takes place in Yorkshire. His parents died when he was about 12, so he spent quite a few years in an orphanage, right? And then when he turned 18, they kicked him out of the orphanage, and his plan B was to come to Australia. So he arrives in Australia in this huge, big land that he knows absolutely nothing about, and feels like he doesn't belong anywhere. He doesn't belong in England, doesn't belong in Australia. So a First Nations elder takes him under his wing and tries to teach him the ways of the bush and how to survive in the bush. So as time goes on, Jimmy actually becomes closer and closer to this Aboriginal mob that are living on the station. So that's where it gives you a very, very, very good insight into First Nations Australian culture. And then I don't want to spoil it for the readers, but let's just say that he ends up feeling as if he belongs.
That's what I was going to say. He found his people, right?
Yeah.
Or it sounds like he found where he belongs from this.
Yeah. There's actually a subplot. Well, there's two, actually. One of the subplots is sort of like his romance with the station owner, Amanda. And the other subplot is about Weiberg's gold, right? But as I said, underneath all of that happening, there's these allegorical aspects that get people to sort of to hold up a mirror to themselves, right, and say, okay, well, maybe we haven't treated through colonization and all that type of thing and the mistreatment of First Nations people, maybe we haven't treated them so well.
Yeah.
I have a lot of interviews in the US and everybody says, yeah, it was exactly the same over here with, Indians and
I mean, America took away the Native Americans' land, and not Americans, but the people that came over to America at the time. So, we completely just stole it all.
Yeah.
Or they stole it all. I shouldn't say I did.
Yeah. So in all of that, there's also, it doesn't delve right into it, but it also mentions the stolen generations. Mm-hmm. Because Durari and, I've got to be careful what I say, because Durari and some of his people were actually, as part of this colonization and that, were actually sent off taken out of their country, taken away from their families and put in these orphanages where they were taught to be white by force.
Interesting.
And I suppose that sort of like leads back into, it doesn't really say in the novel, but leads back into sort of like some of the issues that are linked with First Nations people today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you actually, I researched this a little bit about you, but I want to make sure it's accurate. Did you actually go back and look at your own kind of ancestry going back to like the 1500s?
Yeah. Yeah.
And has that kind of been reflected in your books in some way or another?
Well, yeah. The first two were basically, they're sort of like historical adventure romance. The first one takes place in 1590.
Yeah.
And I actually traced my furthest away ancestor back to 1590. His name was Thomas Rushworth.
Wow.
The novel's called Skullduggery, but he was a peasant that lived on the moors of Yorkshire, and he tenanted in a place called Howarth, which is one of the most cold, desolate places I've ever been to.
Yeah.
And how they lived there, especially in wintertime, I have no idea. Skullduggery is basically a whodunit. Set in 1590. The next one, Red Winter Journey, is set in the English Civil War in 1642. So it's the next generation.
Yeah.
and that one's more about sort of like adventure, historical romance, that type of thing. But that one's more about the story's about a father's love for his son, because in the Civil War, the Parliamentary Army actually kidnaps his son and takes him off to fight for them in the war. And so his father and his grandfather actually go looking for him to get him back. And then it sort of like gives a really, really good insight into what what it was like for these peasant people to live at that time.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. You've talked openly about kind of depression and stuff, and how has being able to tell these stories and writing, has that been super therapeutic for you and kind of helped you get beyond that?
My depression?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, look, when I was writing Red Winter Journey...
That was your second book, right?
It's my second novel, yeah. I was going through a really, really, really rough time, and at work, actually. And I can't go into it too much, but I was probably close to not being here anymore. And I suppose writing, and there is something about part of the journey in that Red Winter Journey is about how this young son comes back from the brink of a mental health issue. And of course, they didn't know too much about it back in those days. But for me, yeah, I suppose it was it did help. It did help. It was like because I wasn't getting that. I suppose that I wasn't getting anything from work, and it was a very, very, very difficult time. And there was a lot of, put it this way, there was a court case that went on.
Okay.
Right? And I actually ended up taking a particular person to the Human Rights Commission. Okay. And so it was a very, very difficult time talking to lawyers, talking to people from the Human Rights Commission. And anyway, it was finally sorted out. Yeah. But going through that for a period of 2 years was a very, very difficult time. I had a very, very, prior to that, I mean, I hadn't really suffered with depression very much. Yeah. And writing, it was good therapy because it took my mind off what was happening.
That's awesome. You also, a lot of your stories, right, have like kind of more ordinary people. It's not these, high. It could be, you even said kind of something about, being kind of like a, maybe a marginalized or, and I don't want to say peasants, but maybe that's a word for it. And it's people that maybe history doesn't always kind of look at. So why is that so important to you to kind of give those people a voice? And I do love that you do that.
Yeah. Well, for just that reason, like most of the books you pick up or look at, it's always about the nobles or about knights, and in skullduggery, it would be about rich station owners in any other novel. And a station is a big farm, a huge farm. It can be the size of England. We call it a station. But yeah, I like to write about sort of like those people that are just like us. Yeah. And how do those normal people deal with these things? Yeah. How do they deal with these difficult situations? And all through that, especially with, I suppose, Red Winter Journey, it was actually nominated. It was nominated for the New South Wales Literature Award. Wow.
I just want to say, like, you should take a moment, though, and just maybe think about this. I do this with some of my guests, right? When I'm really think that they have done something amazing in life, which I think what you're doing is, I think it's great. And just, when you were going through the depression, you said you may not have been here. Just think of all the joy you've given people by being here, how much entertainment you've given. Like, you should really take a step back once in a while if you don't do that, and just think about, wow, I've given so much joy and entertainment and just time to people that normally probably wouldn't have gotten recognized and stuff. Like, that's amazing that you did that. You should really like think about that.
Thank you. Yeah. Look, I think, I mean, I'm a teacher, so every year I teach about sort of like mental health, and mental health it actually comes out in Outback Odyssey, because the main antagonist actually has a mental health issue.
Mm.
So that's sort of like a real solid part of the story, because he's actually trying to get that land off of his niece, right? And so they go to court, and she has to find all this money to buy him out. And the thing is, the Australian mob, Aboriginal mob, actually lives on her land. So if he gets hold of the land, he'll kick them off. And she's really, really closely connected to that Australian mob, because one of the elders actually was the person that brought her up. So yeah, I never really noticed that, but and 2 novels out of the 3 actually touch on mental health.
Yeah.
And in Australia, there's a real issue with mental health in rural areas.
Because there's not enough support there? Is that why there's not enough help?
There's services, but do people use them? There's support, but increasingly more and more people. That's why I don't mind talking about it, because I don't think it should be sort of like taboo subject to talk about. Yeah. I think having a mental health issue is no different to having a broken leg or something like that.
I agree.
That's the way I feel about it. Yeah. And I teach about it every year in school. I don't tell the kids that I suffer with depression, but it's interesting sort of like talking about it, because you've got a really, really good insight into what it's like living with depression.
Yeah. If you could take one of your novels and make it into a movie or like a mini series, which one would you want to do that with?
I'm actually in discussions with a European director at the moment.
For your latest book?
For my latest book, yeah.
Wow.
About turning it into a screen adaptation. And I think I've had a lot of interest in the US, and Carl Svensson, who's he's on IMDb. He's really interested in he's done the pitch deck for it. I've written the screenplay, so I've got a meeting with him tonight at 7 p.m. So I've met him once before, so I'll meet with him again tonight. And I think it'll be about, he's got some producers. He's in communication with some producers. One's in the US and one's in Australia. And so I think tonight's meeting will be about moving that forward and sort of like pushing that pitch deck towards those producers and getting funding for it.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe my next interview will be with you on a red carpet going to the premiere of your movie or something.
I wish.
And I just have one more kind of fun question for you. So you have all these different characters in your books. If you could pick one character to go and get a pint of beer with, which character would you want to go with?
Oh. Probably two actually.
Okay. Go for it.
Probably Thomas Rushworth from my first novel.
Okay.
Because he was obviously the story is fictional, but he was my great-great-grandfather times 10.
Yeah.
Right? So to sit down with him and have a pint would be good. But also, my third novel was called Dream of Courage. And it was set in the early 1700s in Britain. And around the 1700s, there were sort of like pirates and that type of thing. So probably the main character. No, I'd like to sit down with Jimmy from this novel.
Yeah.
The main character in this novel, because he was loosely based on my father.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd sit down with him and have a couple of beers.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, your book is on Amazon here in the US. I'm ordering it as soon as we get off this podcast. It looks like an amazing book. I will put a link to the Amazon book for anybody that wants to order it. Is that the best place to get it? Is Amazon for?
Yeah. Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll put a link to it, and then anybody can go in and buy it. Also, go check out Paul's website. It's paulrushworth-brown.com. You can go and check that out, and I'll put that and his social media. I see your Instagram page and Facebook. I'll put those into the description of the video or the podcast as well, and people can reach out to you.
Zach, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you're amazing. And like I said, I'm so glad I got a chance to talk with you. And I love what you're doing, just kind of keeping the history going. And even if it's fiction, I love the fictional part to it. It's an amazing way to do it. So Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. Everyone, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment on what you thought about Paul. And when you read his book, come back and leave a comment. Tell us what you think about his book. Thanks so much for being on, Paul.
Thanks, Zach.